Welcome back to Scaling for Success. We are here with Katrina Scarlett for the fourth of our last video. We're really going to talk about the customer-centric culture and the role that leadership plays. But before we do that, let's hop in. Katrina, tell us a little bit about what you do.
So I support authors and coaches with amplifying, expanding their customer experience within their online portion of their business so that they can increase client retention, client satisfaction, improve monetization efforts, and then all the while increasing profit margin revenue and creating bigger and greater impact in the world.
I love that. Leadership. We've talked a little bit before about the 5 pillars, and culture and team were pillar number 1 of the 5. Now, I think I might interpret this a little from an operations headspace, a little bit differently than you might interpret culture and team. But ultimately, we're really looking for what role does the leadership, the CEO, the president, whatever you want to call it, what kind of things do they influence?
So I'm going to be straight out and say they influence it all. I'm going to go back to my corporate days of top down, right? Top down 100%. Because if you have a business owner, so we'll talk about, let's say I'm a service provider and I'm on a team, maybe of other subcontractors, and our business owner that we're supporting only cares about revenue, is only striving to be a $2 million business, only cares about profit margin, reducing expenses, all that kind of stuff. Even if I have a big heart of service and I have a big desire to be of service to customers, ultimately the messaging I'm going to get from top down is the dollars are all that matter, right? And eventually I will come to a point where I start to take actions and decisions based on that, right? So I may scale back in how much I give service to a customer for the business, or offering suggestions or recommendations to improve the customer experience, because I know it's going to increase investment and they don't want to do that. All they want is higher profit, less expenses, bottom line's all that matter. You eventually start to hear that, okay, this business doesn't care about customers, it cares about revenue, right? And so in a world of subcontractors, and especially in the online space, I will often part ways with a client when that becomes the messaging, because it's so unaligned to me, right? And even in my pre-online space work, so I used to be in luxury resort management, I've left resorts because they became way too bottom line focused, and it started to affect how I could do my work. I actually had one of my last resorts I used to be a senior event manager, and a new company took over the resort. And eventually the messaging that got trickled down came in the form of me being told that when I had calls with brides and grooms, and I dealt with high-end weddings, like pro athletes, actresses, actors, like the whole shebang, that I had to keep all of my calls with brides and grooms to under 15 minutes. Are you kidding me? Like impossible. Like if you've ever talked to somebody who has their entire wedding visualized and planned out, and it's 12 months before the wedding, and you want to have a conversation in less than 15 minutes, not going to happen. And if it does, you're going to have a very unhappy person on the other end of that conversation, right? And so all of my calls were told to be no more than 15 minutes. And I'm like, I in good conscience cannot deliver on the service that these people are expecting and that they deserve in the parameters you are giving me, right? And
do you think the leadership understood the implication of that comment, of that, hey, I'm going to throw that out to be very focused. I want you to be very focused on your meeting.
No, because to them it was consequential. If I didn't do it, this was going to happen. So it was like, you need to start making your calls 15 minutes or less. And if you're not able to do that, you're going to start to have corrective action. And so, and I couldn't do it. Like, it was not within my moral compass. Like, and there were some conversations where I could have quick calls because it was just a quick question, or I could answer it through email. It didn't require a phone call, right? But it eventually got to the point where like I was constantly being talked to about over delivering service to my clients, not just brides and grooms, but also like high corporations that were coming for conferences that I was taking care of. Like I had one of my clients was Coca-Cola, and I was told to cancel a meeting with them so that I could attend an internal leadership meeting. What? Their event is in 2 weeks. Are you really sure that's the decision you want me to make? right? So eventually I resigned. And I'm sure at some point I probably would have been released because I wasn't willing to drink the Kool-Aid, right? But unfortunately, not a lot of people will stand up for their own moral compass the same way that I do, right? Like service is at the core of what I do, but other people just eventually go with the flow and it just breaks them down where they just become monotonous and they just stop caring about the customer like they did on day one.
Which is sad and unfortunate because ultimately, if you don't have the customers, you don't have a business, right? And so,
Exactly.
what are the best couple of things that you have seen leadership do that improves the focus of the team to
Mhm.
be customer centric?
So I think one of them is having a customer promise. And so a customer promise to me is different than a mission, vision, value statement because a customer promise specifically talks about how you value and respect and show up in service of your customers. And like this
So,
is
I've
even
just learned something customer promise, never heard of it before. Give
boom.
me an example.
Now I can go away. So a customer promise would be something like, within Scarlett and Co, we believe that our customers are our way to success. Through being of top service to our customers, we can create greater impact in the world through the impact they create. Things like that. And that's just me off the cuff. Like that's not necessarily even our customer service promise. Our customer promise is a little bit longer. You can actually see it on our website. If you go to the footer, we actually have a link to our customer promise there. I'm very transparent about it.
Link to that will be in the description below.
Perfect. And so, but it basically, it tells internally and externally how you value your customers, right? And how you plan to show up in service and support of them. And so you're basically leading with, I am in business to be of service and support to you. Yes, I need to make money because I can't be of service and support to you if I'm not making money. But my greater mission is to be of service and support to you so you can have greater impact in the world and I can as well subsequently. It's not about revenue, right? And when you're leading authentically in that way and focus more on impact, the rest comes. Like
Yes.
when you get aligned with all of that, the revenue comes, the profit margins come. But when we lead with that information for our team and our prospective customers and our customers. Like, so on a client agreement, when I send a client agreement, the first page is my customer promise, right? Even though it's on my website too, but it's the first page. And so I am very transparent, very upfront with it, but I also have my team aligned with it because I can't live up to that promise if nobody else on my team believes it. Right? So
Correct.
like I advocate for if you have a customer promise, put that in job descriptions when you're hiring people. Ask questions that relate back to your customer promise. Very few people, especially again, if we're looking in the online business space, small to medium business size, like smaller teams, very few people are hiring based on customer service experience, customer values, customer perspective, right, of the person they're looking to hire. They don't ask questions around that. They're far more focused on effectiveness in terms of skill set and experience, right? So
Yeah.
starting to ask questions about like, how do you perceive an experience when somebody, reaches out with a rude email? Like, or, how well do you handle difficult conversations? Or like, but questions that get more to the root of the service, the level of service you want to be offering in your business. So like having a customer promise and making sure that the people you're bringing into your team adopt and believe in that promise as deeply as you do as the business owner, right?
Important. Yeah. Use it
100%.
like core values.
Yeah, it is basically, right? But in a lot of times too, people they think of the core values, yes, to their values as an individual and the ones within their team, but they don't often consider setting out their values with perspective of the customer too, right? Like
Correct.
quite often you don't see something like kindness in a core value,
No, you don't. Now,
right?
well, actually, I say no because it's not very often.
It's not
And yet
common.
the clients that you and I interact with do that a lot more than I would say most people do.
But that's also in the alignment, right? Of how we've
Yeah.
aligned our businesses to our values so that then we're working with people who basically mimic the same values. right?
Correct.
So, but I think it's really like it's the top down, because if I don't believe in the value of my customers, if I don't respect customers, if I generally just don't like people, and I'm offering a business that is more customer centric, that involves working with people, right? If I'm a coach and I don't like people, something is wrong. For one.
I may need to rethink my job. Yes.
Right? But even if you're a product-based business, right? People who have product-based businesses, especially as business owners or upper management, can go into the business thinking that customer service doesn't matter, customer experience doesn't matter. And I will call BS to that until the cows come home. Because even if you, as the business owner or say COO, don't have direct interaction with customers, decisions and actions you take have a direct impact on your customers and how your team interacts with customers.
Yes.
Right? So you can think about like, I spent 4 years working on cruise ships, and there was a big change in upper management in the city-based offices. They cleaned house, and a mass amount of the C-level people they brought into the company had never worked a day in their life on a cruise ship. Do you think they were making decisions that actually improved the lifestyle and service being offered on a ship? Not at all. Not at all. All bottom line focus, because that's what they were hired for. Right? And so it impacted the service we could give on board, because we were working longer, we were working harder, we were tired, we were overworked, right? And then they cut our food budget. So the food we were being served in the cafeterias was like so subpar that like we weren't even getting enough protein, right? That all has trickle effect into how the service of the customers was happening on board. So it's that idea of like, you have to be making decisions and understanding that the decisions and the actions that you have or that you make, even as a management level team member who doesn't have direct interaction with customers, still impacts how customers are serviced and treated by other team members. There's also internal customer service, which I advocate for a lot. Like if you have a team of 10, you have customers you are servicing. They are your team members. You have internal customer service just as much as you have external customer service, right?
And if customer service isn't, for those who are listening, isn't the right term for you, think about them as stakeholders.
Yes. Yes.
Internal stakeholders, external stakeholders. There's some that have more of a stake in what you're doing and some that have less. But ultimately, that alignment really starts from the top to make sure that however it is you want them to be treated, however you want things to roll out, really does take place with the decisions that are being made for the health and welfare of the business. Because you said it earlier, Katrina, the business is there to serve, and if it doesn't survive, it doesn't serve anybody.
Right.
So there is a balance to be had.
Yeah. And you can't expect it to come from the bottom up, right? Like I had a client once, or a prospective client, who wanted me to come into the business to essentially create a customer-centric culture, because nobody on their team, like even them, they didn't see value in the customers and respect the customers. And so it was a very transactional way of thinking in that business. Like sell a product, get them out the door, sell a product, get them out the door. They didn't care about retaining clients. It was a very linear focus to revenue and product sales. And there's only so much I can do. I can help make certain decisions. I can help reduce frictions and barriers so you sell more and people feel like it's an easier experience. But I can't teach your team to like people. You can't bring one person into the bottom of your team and expect it to have a trickle effect upwards. It's the other way around.
Yeah. And that's why pillar one, when you talked about the 5 pillars, culture and team.
It's your foundation.
It is. Katrina, this was great. I really appreciate everything that you have shared with us, from, really understanding the fundamentals, thinking about the pillars, thinking about the metrics, what the advantages and disadvantages, the things that we've seen really worked well, the best practices have been. And then that reminder in today's conversation about the fact that it really does start from you as the CEO, the COO, the C-suite, the leaders in the organization. You have to think about how that's being perceived along the way.
Yep.
This was
So
great. Thank you
Thank
so much.
you.
Appreciate everything, Katrina.
My pleasure.